Hi, everyone. I am Jenny Douglas. I'm Revel's hosting director. Revel is a platform nationwide and increasingly in cities around the world that seeks to be of support to women in midlife and beyond who are seeking to reimagine the possibilities as we age. And it is my great pleasure to welcome to Revel's Raging Gracefully podcast, Stephanie Gangi, our first guest in a four-part series I'm doing here around the idea of late bloomers. In addition to being my good friend, Stephanie is the author of two novels, The Next, which the New York Times calls a cunning variation on the revenge fable, and Carrie the Dog, the paperback of which is due out this November 1st. Ta-da, there it is. Oh, wow. That looks good. Totally different cover from
the totally different cover. Yeah.
Fantastic. Gangi is also a poet and an essayist and a short fiction writer and a teacher, among many writing hats she wears. I know this is a long introduction, but I feel like I need to kind of ground us in the momentousness of what this is and who Gangi is at this stage in her life. Erica Jong calls you a fascinating writer who understands love, sex, men, and women. About Carrie the Dog, none other than Richard Russo says, I love this. I can't remember a time when I was as completely bewitched by a fictional character as I was by B. Seeger, the protagonist in that novel. And Meg Wolitzer says that Carrie the Dog is carried by insight and true wit. What's remarkable to me, or maybe makes its own kind of sense, which I'd like to explore with you, Gangi, in this conversation, is that your writing career really only took off at the age of 60 when The Next was published. So my first question to you, in addition to offering you a huge warm welcome and much gratitude for agreeing to be part of this, is why then, if you know?
Well, I mean, hi. I'm so happy to be here, and hello to all the people I can't see. And Jenny and I talk a lot, and so if I start to act like it's just she and I at the bar having a drink, you'll please pardon me from being casual.
Pardon. It's their gift. I mean, is there anything more exciting than eavesdropping on other people's conversations, especially if you can imagine them at the bar? So that's my thought for this too.
Yeah, great.
Freewheeling and perfectly imperfect.
Perfect. So, why then? So just to, kind of give a little context, I had always been a writer, but I was what Natalie Goldberg, who wrote Writing Down the Bones, calls a shadow writer. And so I always had jobs that were like writing, but they weren't the kind of writing I really wanted to be doing. And I did that secretly and privately, and I never shared it. And for many, 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 many years. And, I think that I kind of threw myself into whatever husband or boyfriend was on deck. And then when I had kids and a home, I threw myself into that. And I always considered the writing as a hobby. And, not to get too heavy, but I faced in my late 40s and through my 50s a big medical challenge and a divorce and a complete upheaval of many things. And so in order to begin again, I had to begin in my spot, my place, not the place dictated by being a wife or a mother or a partner in a business or an employee, because I had jobs, all along the way. And it was terrifying to do that. But I kind of felt like, if not now, when I was 57 when I started writing The Next, and I had zero experience novel writing, and I learned it myself. I don't have an MFA. I did not have a mentor. I had nothing except an idea for a story. So why then? Because everything else had fallen away. And could I have gotten another boyfriend, gotten married again, hovered over my kids? They were adults, but young adults. you know, I don't know. It was time for me to be what I had always considered previously selfish, which is a
Mm,
word that we should all excise
mhm,
because very few of us are truly selfish.
mhm.
And
I'm so struck by that idea that because everything else had fallen away. I
yeah,
mean, kind of an interesting juxtaposition that at the moment that and there had to be a kind of a loss or a passing of other things that had captured your attention or had been taken from you in order for you to kind of see what was there that was longing to be born next.
absolutely. And by the way, the only thing, like the Mary Oliver poem says, the only life I could save was my own. And I had done the romance and the house and the kids and the career and all these things that hadn't saved me,
Uh,
really. Even though they were the trappings of what
yeah.
should have saved me and may save other people, I'm only speaking for myself, but everything fell away, including all my money. And choosing to be a writer at that time was not, the most financially lucrative idea, but I kept my day job and I figured out how to kind of piggyback so that I was doing both for a while, not a long while, but a while.
Interesting.
And yeah, I had to really, when I think about it, I have a little bit of mixed feelings about having to hit rock bottom and below
Mhm,
before I did what was good for me.
mhm.
I mean, that's not, I would have hoped that I had that impulse much earlier, but I didn't.
It's so interesting. I do feel that because this is for Revel and our audience is women like us, and I say that loosely, but also precisely, because our stories are all different. And yet there can be a through line that a lot of us relate to, whether we're aspiring writers or not. Is what did I want to say? Just this idea of, again, things falling apart. I mean, I think for my own life, and again, we're having a conversation. It isn't just an interview, but I got divorced 14 years ago. And at that moment, I thought my life was over. The best part of my years had been behind me, not knowing that the profound surrender that would come with losing everything as I understood my life to be made of would be the portal through which, and I kind of feel like that losing for me had to happen because, like all human beings, I kind of craved security. And when the security was wrested from me against my choice,
Same.
oh, how interesting. So I guess one question that I have for you, Gangi, because a lot of people can relate to the basic outlines of your story, and for that matter, my story. But is there something that you can identify for, like, I mean, because there are a lot of us also with all kinds of no judgment who want to take that risk, but feel like it's too late for them, that it's just easier to go on the straight and narrow as has been defined by habituation over the decades, because trying to conjure a reality that you haven't created yet for yourself just feels like too impossible a task. So what do you think, if like what made you kind of step into the abyss beyond just the fact that you lost? Do you know? Was it just sheer will?
I think it was it was a combination of being very, of a few factors. One is I hate labels. Like I hate being labeled. It's like a trigger for me. I hate it more than anything. Like, oh, you're so fill in the blank, makes me crazy. And I almost feel like then I have to prove that wrong. Right. And, so, there's almost an aspect of competition or, don't box me in or, some kind of stupid boomer, like I got to be free kind of a thing. And then, I'm not going to put too fine a point on it for today's conversation, but, I'd had breast cancer and my health was in jeopardy. And again, it was like, if not now, when? I'm not going to just pick the same things I always picked to make myself feel better. I
Right.
want to pick the thing that I have always wanted to do. And yeah, I'm resilient,
Mhm.
but I think I became resilient by choosing, again, centering myself finally. And that bore my burdens with me, that, that I chose myself, was like, it was a revelation to me. I grew up believing, my parents, you weren't supposed to center yourself. That was like,
Right.
you were, in the olden days, it was conceited,
Yeah.
which isn't even a word. People don't even use that word anymore.
Right.
And so I had to shed that.
Yeah.
And I think, I honestly do think having cancer helped with that.
So interesting. I mean, it seems like what you're talking about and what I can relate to, if this is what you're saying, is that there has to be a kind of unlearning that takes place. I mean, I remember from my own childhood years, my mother saying, sit like a lady if I didn't have my legs crossed, or go to your room if you can't be nice. I mean, all of these things that come with being a woman in the culture of our age, raised at the basic time period that we were. And so when there's that, and then you're talking about, I really love the idea of the resistance to labels. So even the idea of late bloomer, one of the reasons that this idea interested me is I've always taken issue with that as a label, because it seems so often much more applied to women than men. Lorelei, a question I'm going to get to you in 1 second. And also, I mean, it feels like the kind of rebel in you said, I'm going to use that to prove you wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
So interesting. I want to just take this question from Lorelei. Your characters you wrote about, are they courageous? What do you think, Gangi?
Yes. I mean, yes, I think I'm brave, and I like to write about women being brave. That doesn't mean we, including me, don't take a circuitous path. But I was never going to say die as a person, and I don't let my characters say die. Like, we're just going to prevail, and there is no other option.
Yeah, I also think it occurred to me when you were talking very directly about having had cancer and how that became kind of gave you a sort of laser focus on the clear awareness that, unlike in our 20s, you don't have forever ahead of you, right? And whether you have cancer or not, I mean, I'm a 58-year-old woman in good health, but I share that sentiment. And that has made me bold too, in the sense of, like, when I was younger, I was afraid to make mistakes. So I didn't see myself as necessarily, I was a perfectionist. I wanted to be, I wanted to get in good with those who I thought I should get in good with. And now I just don't even care. Now the critical thing is partnering with myself.
Yes.
I am like, it doesn't really matter who likes me or who doesn't. Of course, like, if you're a writer, you want to get the book contract and you want people to like you who can help you. But the critical thing seems to be like showing up for yourself, which I hear is what you made a conscious decision to do.
I really did. And, one other thing I talk about in the book, and in fact, I'm not really giving too much away to say that the last line of Carry the Dog is the sentence, I don't know. And so part of what helped me have the confidence to try to write was I was the age you are now when I first was writing. And I thought, sorry, oh, for God's sakes.
Okay, sorry, that's my mother. She's on. Go
Tell
ahead.
her I said hello. Tell her I said,
so you were saying the juxtaposition. Go ahead.
Yeah, that when I was probably your age, maybe just a year or two younger, I started thinking to myself how freeing it was to not know, to be able to not know things and not feel like weak or challenged or not as good as the next person. I started to feel really excited about not knowing things.
And that's a huge shift, isn't it?
It seemed like a superpower, actually, to be able to embrace that.
100%. I'm sure you can't see it, or maybe you can. Right behind me is a Rumi quote that I had painted on my dining room wall after my split that says sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment.
Yes.
A radical paradigm shift from my younger life.
Yes.
And to your point, that has been the source of my liberation. Like,
Yes.
show up, try your best, and then who knows where you're going to be found.
Yeah.
And kind of find the humor and the grace and the power in that.
Yeah, and I would also apply that to my own identity. Like, I don't know. I have many more, layers and lives to live within this one life. And I actually do think, if I'm patting myself on the back a little, I have always been like that. I have always been very present and willing to be wrong, and I make a million mistakes. And I don't see that as, a character flaw or a weakness.
Right.
I see that as growth. And then when I was a little bit older and I had a couple of marriages behind me and, blah, 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 I thought, well, instead of feeling like I can't make any more mistakes, I'm just going to go big on making a mistake, and I'm going to try to write a novel.
I love that. And I want to say, like, that is my preaching thing to any woman our age.
I
Like,
think that's why we love each other too.
Yes,
Like, we
it's
both.
so true. I mean, and that's the fun of it. And who cares?
Yeah.
What is the worst thing that we could happen is that we fall on our faces. And if that doesn't kill us, like, we can somehow find a way to laugh about it.
And I keep
Yeah.
getting up, so I'm not
Right.
going to not get up.
I know. I love that. I was looking in preparing for this conversation. I was struck by something that you said in an interview you did last year, where you said, quote, on the back jacket of the Carry the Dog book, it says that my debut novel was published at age 60. If anyone can do the math and figure it out, I'm 65, which I kind of think you are now.
I'm 66.
Oh, 66. Okay, excuse me. But same, the point is true, holds true. I love this. I have made a conscious decision to brandish my age. I'm still going strong. I'm still interested in sex. I'm still interested in music. I don't feel old, and I'm not afraid of aging. That to me was manna from heaven. To hear, because we don't hear voices like this. We don't
I
hear
still
voices.
believe that. I still feel that way.
I believe you, and I think your readers believe you, and I think that's why you have readers, because we trust you and we believe you, and your voice is a voice the likes of which there are not enough of in the country.
I mean, I think it's changing. I do think it's cracking open a bit. And who's the actress? You and I disagreed a little bit on the frontal nudity of Emma Thompson, and that.
Oh yeah, right.
But I do think
love that. I love that. I
that.
thought that was the most powerful final thing when she did full frontal, and you thought it was a bit much.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit much, but
Okay. But then we've agreed to disagree on Lisa Rinna from The Real Housewives.
all right, let's not air our dirty laundry.
Right,
here.
sorry, this has gotten down market too quickly. I love it. I love the variety of it all. Okay, I've got a bunch of questions here. We've already answered them. Oh, here's them. In preparing for our conversation, I was reminded that you've covered a lot of ground. You absolutely don't play it safe in your writing. I'm thinking about the different things that you have written that cover such a wide breadth of material and really seem to be fearless to me. And really, I think because of that, have touched me, and I know others a lot. I'm thinking about the beautiful essay you wrote where you were counting how many times you'd been touched in a week and trying to figure out whether the manicurist or having the dog brush against you counted. It was just so beautiful, so moving. You covered rather fearlessly inequities or financial disparities in friendship.
Yep.
A lot of stuff like that we don't typically talk about, but you took on. And the recent thing that you're doing that I'm just loving the conceit of is the idea you're writing a regular column on apologies, both owed you and apologies that you owe others. And so again, like, I just want to say, like, your courage is always inspiring and galvanizing and makes me feel brave to just see the trajectory of your career. And also,
You're getting me teary now.
I just wonder, like, this is why I take issue with the idea of late bloomers, but I don't want to lead the wagon here. Could you have tackled all this, would you have had this clear-eyed curiosity and courage to tackle this stuff at a younger age?
I mean, I'm a human being and I wish I had made money writing earlier. Of course, I'm still like scrabbling and selling and doing my best because I started so late. I only started this 5 years ago. And so could I have? I think I could have. I mean, I'm going to be hard on myself. I think I could have if I had not. I think I had a lot of ego in the way and I was afraid to fail. And so I put all of my creative energy and my life force into whoever I was with, including men, including my kids, including my family, my extended family. And that became my creative outlet. And I, was the engineer of all that. I can't blame anybody but myself or take responsibility. Nobody else gets it but me. And yet it was not, it is not everlasting. The kids grow up, the men leave, and, then it's
Here
just,
you are.
there
That's
I
right.
am. So could I have done it earlier? Maybe if I had segregated the part of myself that was more centering myself, but that just wasn't who I was. It took, to my 50s until I thought, am I really going to get another boyfriend?
Right. How do you look back on that earlier time in your life? I mean, in some ways I'm thinking, oh, like there was Gangi as a character, which is silly, but it's just the way I'm thinking. The younger you and then the you now. And I'm just wondering, were they two different people? Do you feel kindly toward your younger self?
I do. I mean, I was all sexed up and drugged up and rock and rolled up. It was the time. It was the 70s and 80s. What can I say? I'm not going to apologize. I had a blast, and it certainly informs my writing. I can't say it doesn't. I've written about music. Everything I write is always touched with music. I'm always listening to music, and that's in there. So I also, one of the subjects I'm exploring now, I'm working on another novel, is all of our identities inform our present identity, and there are more to come. So I don't like to think about like, oh, well, I was this way then. I feel like I was that way then, and then I'm now. That still informs who I am now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just a big stew.
It is a big stew.
Not phases that have, kind of a timeline.
It's a big stew. And I'm wondering if we would all be better served by seeing our lives as a stew and not seeing our lives or as phases, as things we need to get out of to get better. I mean, I like the idea of progress as much as anyone. And also, life is kind of like this. And with any luck, we learn and we make better choices. But we couldn't have made those choices when we were younger because we didn't know enough.
Exactly.
And one thing I really feel, one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you on here and have other women in different disciplines who have seemingly, met conventional success at a later age is to really investigate with some rigor some of the assumptions that the culture puts on any of us when we're called late bloomers. Like from where I sit, you were blooming right on time. And by the way, you just bloomed in different ways.
I was always blooming. Yeah, I was always blooming. What value that blooming had to me at the time is something I do look back. I'm a human being. I'm 66 years old. Of course, I'm going to, look back. But I did, for me personally, and this is not for everybody, I did have to cut away, just to flog this metaphor to death. I did have to cut away, the weeds and the bramble of the garden so that I could bloom now.
Yeah.
And I say bloom now on purpose. I have always pictured myself as being, dynamic and vital when I was older. Like, I'm not going to put that part of me away because I'm
Right.
older. That doesn't
Yeah.
even seem possible.
Yeah.
So I just had to find a new garden.
Well, let me ask you about the pruning process, if I may,
Yeah.
because I think like the nuts and bolts of it are very interesting to me and probably
Yeah.
something I still could learn from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you talked about, you had corporate, you had to, support yourself and help your kids, and you weathered a divorce, and you had to be there for certain people. And there was a lot of stuff that kept you from, creating and taking yourself seriously, perhaps as a writer, and putting yourself at the forefront and not calling it selfish. But like in terms of making that transition and in terms of like your daily routine now, what did you have to change or tweak from your old life in order to give yourself grow into the life that was waiting for you?
But this is not the answer for anyone but me.
Mhm.
I stopped dating.
Uh-huh. Can you do this because it was a distraction from what you
No,
wanted?
because I'm always all in.
Yeah. And you knew
You
yourself.
know, that was siphoning away my energies. I really had to kind of get very solitary
Yeah.
and consider myself sequestered from my social life, for sure. I read at the time when I was deciding that I was going to do this writing thing, I read a quote by Elizabeth Gilbert, and I'm going to get it wrong, but I'll give the gist of it, which is, she says, I've never met anyone who went through a major transformation in their lives who didn't start out confronting their own bullshit.
Mm.
And I think that is so true. And so, one thing is I was unafraid to do that.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm also thinking when I was in my 20s, my mom gave me a book of essays called Playing After Dark by Barbara Lazier Asher. I literally was 22 years old, but there was one essay in the
Oh, yeah, that
anthology
sounds familiar.
called Middle Age, Becoming the Person You Always Were. And it likened the negative spaces of a sculpture as being as important as the positive spaces. And the choices we don't make say as much as the choices we do. And it really can only be when we reach a seasoned age in life that we recognize what are the themes that we couldn't have seen when we were younger, and what do we want to, what furnace do we want to stoke, and what furnace do we not? So again, like this idea, and I guess I really want to say it, or have you say it if you want to, or affirm the idea to our Revel audience, is this idea of late bloomers could be a bunch of baloney, and maybe like you have to get to it, you have to have like lived a certain critical mass of life to be able to practice discernment around what you want.
Well, I'm going to challenge that a little.
Please do.
There is also financial realities. It's, it might be a privileged lens to be able to say that, like I'm, always blooming, and which is what I said.
What's the high pitched voice?
That's me. I was mocking myself. The fact of the matter was I really in some phases had no options. I was the primary breadwinner with 2 children after my divorce, and I couldn't just throw caution to the wind and bloom. I had to go in and hide my light under a corporate bushel.
Right.
But having said that, that job did give me discipline.
Right.
And health insurance,
right,
and money in the bank. So it relieved me enough. And after 10 years at it, I felt I was good to get up at 4 a.m. and start trying to write. And then I stayed for another 5 years.
Right.
I didn't just jettison that, although I sure wanted to. So I'm always blooming, but there are certain realities that women face. You gotta pay the bills. Yeah.
Totally hear that. I think that is something that we can all relate to. And even with health struggles, I mean, to me, and again, not putting a Pollyanna spin on this, it's because of your health struggles, because you didn't have independent financial means, that give your decision to be a writer and take that seriously that much more heft,
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
just,
I would say if I'm being, now I feel like I'm just talking to you and I forget that there are other people listening, but it's too late now. Maybe I would say in my darker moods, why did it take so much burden
mm,
me to rise up?
yeah,
Right? Why did I
know.
really have to get kneecapped again and again before I came back and rose up in
Right.
my way? Because I was always rising up and taking care of the kids and worrying about this and that, and making sure
Yeah,
everybody knows the drill. We all do
right.
it.
Well, you
But
know what the Buddhists say.
what do the Buddhists say?
The Buddhists say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And
Right.
sometimes you do have to fall on your kneecaps, not once, not twice, but 75 times over decades.
So true.
Right? I mean, we just
Yes.
have to be kind of loving about that aspect because we're humans and we're not, we're
And
not.
and still, even though I have done this thing and course corrected and made this crazy turn and it's gone very well for me and
Yeah.
unexpected, and it's still wherever you are there, wherever you go, there you are.
I was going to ask you about that. And that's I have it written down wherever you go. And do you feel, excuse me as I burp, you feel the charming? Do you feel so? Yeah. I mean, maybe it goes back to this whole idea of the rich bouillabaisse, right? Like,
Yeah.
bouillabaisse has you, Stephanie, it includes one of its morsels is used Gangi. Stephanie Gangi is a successful writer who has amazing, like world-class writers saying fantastic things about your book. And it also includes the younger version of yourself and the person who's, fell on her knees 25 times.
Yes.
It's all part of the mix, right?
Yeah. And yes. And I know you're like this too. I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah, me neither.
I
And I
am
think
not
that
afraid of
that has been the passport to my liberation is
Same here.
being able
Same
to
here.
sit with what's hard and to the point of Rumi and to the point of living in the question mark, to the point of Rilke saying, have patience with all that's unresolved in your heart.
And it's funny. One of my kids sent me some link to some podcast. I'm sure everybody listens to it, but me, but it's Glennon Doyle is her
Oh
name.
yeah. My kids listen to Glennon Doyle.
Okay. It drives me up a wall. The title of the podcast makes me crazy, called
What is it? You can do hard things. Yeah, I know. My daughter Delilah loves Glennon Doyle. And I will say
I'm not even talking about the content. I haven't listened. But that title, well, who says there's even an option? Of course.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're talking to a toddler to me. So I was never afraid of doing hard things. I think that's
maybe
true.
that might separate you out from some of the rest of us, right?
Yeah.
Let me just say, if anyone wants to at this moment who's listening in live, please feel free. If you have a question for Stephanie Gangi, ask it now. And if you don't, that's fine. The podcast will live on Raging Gracefully. I do want to ask you, Stephanie Gangi.
Jenny Douglas.
Do you think of, just to get back to the late bloomer thing, because I think we can pretty much dispense of it, but I'm curious to know, do you consider yourself to be a late bloomer?
Well, I did when I first did this, because there's that Sharon Olds quote that I recently pulled it down. It was on my bulletin board, and her quote is the Sharon Olds, the poet, "I was a late bloomer, but anyone who blooms at all ever is lucky."
Oh, I've never heard that.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it now, because
why? I love it. How
is
can
it
you
luck though? Is it luck?
Well, I don't see the emphasis on that, like observation being about luck. I mean, it said something else. To me, the idea that stands in my mind, and you're hearing that for the first time, is that a lot of us never bloom.
Yeah.
And I don't say that with judgment.
No, of course not. Yes.
It's just a lot of us don't give ourselves permission.
Yeah.
To really try hard and to show up for ourselves every day, regardless of what the outcome of that is.
Yes.
And I think that does require a core courage that needs nourishing on the part of many of us.
Yeah. I didn't get there till my 50s.
Yeah, nor I. That's why I really have to say, I think the idea of late bloomers is kind of bunk.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with you.
Anyway, so what I want to say to you, Stephanie Gangi, is
Yes.
I want to confirm that Carry the Dog is out in paperback on November 1st. Could you please hold it up one more time?
I can. And you know what I was thinking I would do? We'll talk about this. Maybe I'll do a giveaway on Revel.
Oh, amazing. Okay. As hosting director, you and I can talk about how we can create an event out of that idea.
Okay.
Perfect. And tell us, I only found out by going on your website today that you actually have either a working title or a title for your forthcoming or your next work, The Good Provider. Is there any hint you want to give us about that? It sounds delectable. No,
it's a departure for me.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, this has been super fun. I can almost convince myself.
Time to drink.
We were exactly. Where do we meet for the dirty martini at Balthazar? I'll see you in 45 minutes. Anyway, good to have you all, those of you who were here for this. And if you're just listening on via podcast, maybe in your car or walking around your neighborhood in your earpods, thank you for listening. Stephanie Gangi, my muse, my friend, my person who does good, interesting, fantastic work and is an inspiration in this world. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you.
It was fun. It was fun.